For years, China thought it had the Philippines right where it wanted, wrapped up in promises, investments, and quiet loyalty. Billions of dollars were pledged, grand projects were announced, and for a while, it seemed like the two countries were walking hand in hand toward a shared future. But here we are in 2025, and the story has taken a shocking turn. China has officially lost the Philippines. For good. What went wrong? Tensions in the South China Sea, unfulfilled promises, and growing distrust have pushed the Philippines to make a bold move. Straight into the arms of new allies. And Beijing? It never saw it coming. Today, we're diving into how China's early strategies backfired, how Filipinos rallied to defend their sovereignty, and why Manila is now closer than ever to the US, Japan, and Australia. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why experts are calling this China's biggest geopolitical loss of the decade. Let's rewind. In the early 2000s, China rolled out an ambitious playbook for the Philippines. More than $24 billion in promised investments. Railways, bridges, airports, energy projects, all wrapped under the Grand Belt and Road Initiative. Presidents came and went, from Gloria Macapagal Arroyo to Rodrigo Duterte, each signing historic deals in Beijing with optimism in the air. The Philippine media was electric with excitement. Headlines promised a new golden age. Faster trains, new bridges like the Binondo Intramuros Bridge, irrigation projects in the Chico River, and massive infrastructure that would change the skyline. Across the country, cranes rose, construction boomed, and for many Filipinos, this felt like the start of something big, a chance at real progress. Economists predicted millions of jobs, while local business owners dreamed of prosperity. But beneath the enthusiasm, cracks began to show. Skeptics, economists, journalists, and even politicians started asking the hard questions. What were the hidden costs? How much control was China really gaining? And would the Philippines end up drowning in debt and dependency? What happened next would rewrite the entire relationship. At first, the money kept rolling in. Bridges, ports, and railways began to rise from the ground, reshaping the Philippines one project at a time. Trade with China exploded, and by 2018, Beijing had become one of Manila's biggest economic partners. For a while, it looked like a win-win. Politicians hailed a new golden partnership, while glossy ads showed shiny new roads and futuristic skylines. But beneath that polished surface, something deeper and darker was at play. China wasn't just building infrastructure, it was building influence. Every port, every bridge, every loan came with quiet leverage. Strategic projects began to hand Beijing access to key sectors of the Philippine economy. And before long, people started noticing the strings attached. By the late 2010s, those cracks in the so-called friendship began to show. Massive projects like the Kaliwa Dam stalled amid environmental protests. The Chico River loan deal sparked outrage once people discovered its tough repayment terms. What was once seen as generosity now looked like a trap. News outlets uncovered ballooning costs and shady contracts. Investigative journalists exposed secret deals, leaked documents, and backroom negotiations. Headlines screamed corruption, overpricing, and political favors. Courtrooms lit up with high-profile cases involving Chinese contractors and local officials. Ordinary Filipinos began to feel the fallout firsthand. Along the South China Sea, fishermen suddenly found themselves blocked from their own waters. Chinese patrol ships, claiming control of areas the Philippines had called its own for generations. Livelihoods disappeared overnight. The backlash was swift. Town halls filled with angry residents demanding answers. Protesters flooded the streets, carrying signs that read, "Philippines, not for sale." On social media, millions joined in, amplifying their outrage, uniting their voices, and calling out what they saw as foreign exploitation. What had once been framed as friendship now felt like coercion. Trust in China plunged, and the message from the Filipino people was clear. Enough was enough. And when Beijing pushed harder, the Filipinos pushed back even harder. The era of quiet acceptance was over. By the early 2020s, the South China Sea had become a live wire, a powder keg ready to explode. Filipino and Chinese vessels found themselves locked in tense maritime standoffs. Then came the moment that shocked the world. A Chinese Coast Guard ship unleashed water cannons on a Filipino supply boat. The footage spread like wildfire across global news outlets. Outrage poured in from Washington, Tokyo, and Brussels. China brushed off the criticism, claiming nearly the entire region as its own, dismissing both international law and Philippine sovereignty. But this time, the world and the Filipino people weren't looking away. Faced with growing aggression, the Philippines made a bold move. Manila took China to court, filing a landmark case with the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. Then came 2016, a turning point. The UN-backed tribunal delivered its verdict loud and clear. The Philippines was right. China's sweeping claims over the South China Sea had no legal basis. It was a stunning victory, at least on paper. But Beijing refused to accept the ruling. Instead of backing down, it doubled down, sending more ships, building more bases, and pushing tensions to the brink. Out at sea, Filipino fishermen, who had once freely cast their nets in their ancestral waters, suddenly found themselves under threat. Chinese patrols harassed them, blocking access, even seizing their catch. Many returned home empty-handed, their boats damaged, their livelihoods destroyed. News cameras captured their stories, fathers breaking down as they spoke of lost income, mothers worrying about how to feed their children, young men uncertain if they'd ever fish those waters again. The conflict had stopped being about politics. It had become painfully personal. Meanwhile, Chinese forces fortified disputed islands, building military outposts, runways, and radar stations. What once looked like coral reefs now bristled with weaponry. The fear wasn't just about territory anymore. It was about food security, freedom, and the future of the next generation. Families struggled to make ends meet. ASEAN tried to step in, calling for unity. But the alliance was split. Some nations wanted to confront Beijing, while others stayed silent, unwilling to risk economic fallout. That silence, however, didn't last long. Back home, public anger exploded. Across the Philippines, people took to the streets, demanding action. Social media feeds lit up with outrage and defiance. Maps showing China's vast territorial claims went viral, making it clear to every Filipino. This wasn't just about trade or diplomacy. It was about national pride, sovereignty, and the future of their country. And that's when something remarkable happened. Filipinos, from Luzon to Mindanao, began to unite like never before. In Manila's Luneta Park, tens of thousands gathered, waving flags and chanting, "Sovereignty is non-negotiable." Protest leaders like Maria Santos and June Ramirez rallied the crowds, their voices booming through megaphones. "Stand with the Philippines." The energy was electric. Teachers, fishermen, students, business owners, all standing shoulder to shoulder. All across the nation, youth groups and civic organizations organized flash mobs, candlelight vigils, and human chains of solidarity. Online, hashtags like #DefendPH and #NoToChina spread like wildfire, reaching millions within hours. It wasn't just a protest anymore, it was a movement. And for Beijing, that wave of unity became its biggest nightmare. Because for the first time in a long time, The Philippines wasn't standing alone. It was standing together. And the whole world was watching. Influencers and activists took the fight online. Social media lit up with live updates, emotional interviews, and powerful calls to action. Viral videos showed students standing shoulder to shoulder, chanting, "Protect Philippine sovereignty," as their voices echoed through campuses and city streets. The message spread like wildfire, from Manila to Mindanao, and it couldn't be ignored. Under growing public pressure, the government held urgent press conferences, vowing to review every deal signed with Beijing. What started as an online movement had turned into a national reckoning. Polls soon told the story. Trust in China had crashed to record lows, while pride in Filipino sovereignty surged higher than ever. This wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal. Filipinos were standing up for their identity, dignity, and independence. The nation stood united, and the world was watching. But China made a crucial mistake. It underestimated how far the Philippines was willing to go, because what happened next would change everything, and prove that Filipino unity was not just strong, it was unbreakable. As public trust in Beijing collapsed, the United States, Japan, and Australia stepped in with unprecedented support. Suddenly, the South China Sea was buzzing with activity. Allied warships, aircraft, and Filipino forces training side by side in massive joint exercises. In Manila, diplomats and defense officials from all four nations gathered for historic signings. Cameras flashed as leaders shook hands, exchanged documents, and made one thing clear. The Philippines was no longer standing alone. The US secured access to 4 new military bases, deploying advanced aircraft and humanitarian teams across the archipelago. American and Filipino troops trained shoulder to shoulder, while Washington pledged billions in economic and security aid. Japan followed suit, announcing major investments in infrastructure and defense. Japanese engineers and naval ships arrived to help modernize Philippine ports and strengthen maritime security. Tokyo's leaders visited Manila, declaring their unwavering commitment to peace and regional stability. Then came Australia. Its naval presence in the region expanded dramatically. Australian vessels joined patrols with Filipino forces, delivering humanitarian supplies and standing firm on one message: freedom of navigation must be protected. At joint press conferences, Australian and Filipino officials stood side by side, vowing to defend open seas and shared values. Soon, the world's cameras were focused squarely on Manila, capturing images of warships slicing through blue waters, diplomats signing treaties, and leaders from across the globe pledging unity in the face of aggression. The Philippines, once seen as the underdog, had become the heart of a powerful new coalition. And in a twist no one in Beijing saw coming, China's hardline tactics had backfired spectacularly. Instead of isolating the Philippines, China had done the opposite. It united the world's democracies in Manila's defense. The message was clear: the era of silence was over. The Philippines had found its voice, and the world was listening. But Beijing's biggest mistake was still ahead, and it would seal its loss forever. Instead of backing off and rebuilding trust, China doubled down. Suddenly, waves of cyber attacks slammed into the Philippines' government systems, paralyzing key agencies and leaking sensitive data across the internet. At the same time, disinformation flooded social media. Fake news, deepfakes, and manipulated videos designed to divide Filipinos and undermine public confidence. And then came the bombshell. Investigators uncovered covert Chinese influence operations inside Philippine politics. Agents caught bribing local officials and meddling in elections. What began as quiet whispers of corruption exploded into a full-blown scandal. The government moved fast, Emergency press briefings were held daily, exposing the attacks, naming those involved, and calling on Filipinos to stand united for national security. But anger had already reached a boiling point. Across the nation, protests erupted outside Chinese-owned businesses. Some were forced to close their doors as crowds chanted and waved flags. The outrage was unmistakable and unstoppable. The international community responded in unison, condemning Beijing's actions. Several Chinese diplomats were expelled from Manila, marking a dramatic breakdown in relations. Trust in China hit rock bottom. And in the middle of this storm, the Philippines made a move that no one, least of all Beijing, ever expected. In 2024, the Philippine Congress passed a historic law that permanently shifted the nation's foreign policy. It was a defining moment, a declaration that the Philippines would never again trade sovereignty for dependency. Lawmakers took to the podium, delivering fiery speeches about dignity, self-determination, and strength through alliance. Crowds filled the streets, waving flags and cheering as fireworks lit up the night sky. Soon after, defense treaties with the United States, Japan, and Australia were fully activated. World leaders gathered in emergency coalition meetings, reinforcing their commitment to push back against Chinese expansion in the Indo-Pacific. But this time, the Philippines wasn't just a partner, it was a leader. Manila began pouring resources into its navy and coastal defenses, launching new ships and upgrading air and naval bases along its maritime borders. Filipino pilots trained alongside American, Japanese, and Australian forces, while new radar systems and surveillance drones scanned the South China Sea. The message was crystal clear. To Beijing and to the world, the Philippines would no longer be intimidated. It would be defended, determined, and free. Our sovereignty is not for sale. Those words echoed across the nation, from the halls of Congress to the smallest fishing villages. Flag-raising ceremonies, candlelight vigils, and massive public rallies painted a powerful picture of unity. The message was unmistakable. The Philippines had chosen its future, on its own terms. This wasn't just another policy shift. It was a defining moment, not just for the Philippines, but for all of Asia. A new chapter was unfolding, one built on independence, strength, and self-respect. The world watched as Filipinos stood tall, confident and united, charting their own course toward lasting regional stability. China once believed it could buy loyalty with money and promises, but what it failed to understand was the one thing it could never purchase: the Filipino spirit. Now the Philippines has stepped boldly into a new era, one where sovereignty, dignity, and trusted alliances matter more than any short-term gain. The question now is, did the Philippines make the right call by breaking away from Beijing's shadow? And how will this choice reshape Asia's balance of power in the years to come? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.